Abraham. You know the name. He's one of the most influential people in all of human history, a foundational figure for billions of people in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But here's the big question. When did he actually live? Seriously, let's dive into this, because trying to find the answer is like opening up one of history's greatest puzzles.
You'd think for someone so important, we'd have a solid date, right? But we don't, not even close. Trying to place him on a timeline has been a huge debate for centuries, and it matters, because if you can figure out when he lived, you can understand the world he came from, the context for all these stories that went on to shape entire civilizations. So where do we even start to look for an answer?
Well, we have to treat it like a 4,000-year-old cold case. The evidence? It's ancient, it's in pieces, and sometimes the clues straight up contradict each other. But if we piece together the texts, the family trees, and what we know from archaeology, we can start to see a picture emerge. So let's grab our magnifying glass and look at our first major clue.
Okay, our investigation starts inside the ancient texts themselves, and it all revolves around one single super important number, 430. But as you're about to see, even a simple number isn't so simple.
So here's the version most people are familiar with. It comes from the Masoretic text, which is basically the standard Hebrew Bible. It says, plain as day, the people of Israel lived in Egypt for 430 years. Seems pretty clear, right? That sets up one major timeline. Case closed? Not so fast.
Because then you look at another, even older version of the text, a Greek translation called the Septuagint, and it throws a massive wrench in the works. It adds two tiny but critical words, and Canaan. All of a sudden, this changes everything. The 430 years isn't just the time in Egypt anymore. It includes the time the patriarchs were in Canaan before they even got there.
And boom, that's our central conflict right there. We have a fork in the road. Do we follow the clue that points to a really long 430-year stretch just in Egypt? Or do we follow the other clue that splits that time between two different places, which would slash the time in Egypt in half?
This number, 215, now becomes the key to this whole second theory. If the total time was 430 years, that would mean it was split pretty evenly, 215 years in Canaan and 215 years in Egypt. But hold on, where are they getting that 215 number for the time in Canaan? Is that just a random guess?
Turns out it's not a guess at all. The math is actually incredibly precise, and it's all laid out in the patriarchal ages. You just add it up. 25 years from when Abraham got to Canaan until Isaac was born, plus 60 years until Jacob was born, plus Jacob's age of 130 when the family moved to Egypt. And what do you get? 215. Exactly. It fits perfectly.
So that's the dilemma. We've got two ancient, totally valid manuscript traditions pointing in two completely different directions. And this one little change can shift Abraham's timeline by more than 200 years. I mean, that's the difference between him living during one major historical empire versus a totally different one. It changes his entire world. So let's see if we can find another clue to break the tie.
Okay, time for our next piece of evidence, the family tree. Maybe the number of generations that passed while they were in Egypt can tell us something about how long they were actually there.
And right there in Genesis, there's this promise made that Abraham's descendants would come back from this period of oppression in the fourth generation. Now think about it. A generation isn't usually 100+ years long, so this 4 generations thing, it sounds a lot more like a shorter stay, doesn't it? And wouldn't you know it, the book of Exodus seems to lay this out perfectly. It gives us a direct line from Levi, one of the brothers who went into Egypt, to his son Kohath, to his grandson Amram, and finally to his great-grandson Moses, who led the Exodus. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 generations. Just like the prophecy said.
This feels like our smoking gun, doesn't it? I mean, 4 generations fit so much more comfortably into that 215-year timeline than the big 430-year one. It seems like it solves the puzzle and gives a big point to the Septuagint's version.
But like any good detective story, just when you think you've cracked it, there's a twist. And this whole family tree clue, well, it's not nearly as simple as it looks. Things are about to get way more complicated.
So what on earth does the number 8,600 have to do with 4 generations? Well, it turns out, everything. This is one of those moments where you have to look at the other details in the text, specifically the population numbers.
Okay, so here's the twist. Amram, who is listed as Moses' dad, generation number 3, was also the head of a whole clan,
the Amramites. And a census that was taken right around the time of the Exodus counted 8,600 male members just in his clan alone. Now, there is no way, it's demographically impossible for one man's direct grandsons and great-grandsons to number in the thousands. So what does that mean? It suggests the genealogy is telescoped, that it's only listing the big, important names and skipping a bunch of generations in between. The 4 generations might actually be 4 major clan periods, and just like that, our smoking gun goes up in smoke.
All right, so the clues inside the text are a bit of a mess, pointing in different directions. Let's step outside the text and open up the archaeology file. Can we find anything in the historical record, any external proof that can give us a firm anchor point for Abraham's life?
For a long time, there was this really popular theory trying to connect a king mentioned in Genesis, a guy named Amraphel, with the very famous Babylonian king Hammurabi. If you could prove that, it would be incredible. But modern scholarship has pretty much put that idea to rest. For one, Hammurabi's dates, around 1700 BC, are probably too late to fit most of Abraham's possible timelines. And two, linguists have shown that the names Amraphel and Hammurabi, well, they just don't really match up. So, unfortunately, that's a dead end.
Okay, here's another challenge that pops up when you look at the archaeological record. The book of Genesis describes Abraham and later his son Isaac interacting with the Philistines. But for historians, this raises a potential red flag.
So here's the problem. It's all about the timing. If Abraham lives somewhere around 2000 BC, but our first really widespread archaeological evidence for Philistines showing up in that land isn't until around 1200 BC, that's a gap of 800 years. Critics look at that and call it an anachronism, basically a detail that's out of place, something from a later time that got inserted into an older story. So what do we do with that? Is it proof that the story was written down way later by someone who just assumed the Philistines were always there? Or is it what historians call an argument from silence? You know, maybe there was an earlier, smaller group of Philistines that archaeology just hasn't happened to find yet. After all, the absence of evidence isn't always evidence of absence. It's a tough call.
All right. We have looked at the textual clues, we've untangled the genealogies, and we've sifted through the external evidence. And every single piece has its own problems and complexities. So, after all this detective work, where does that leave us? Let's try to bring all the variables together.
So, when you lay out all the possibilities, you really see the problem. It all depends on which clues you decide to follow. If you take an early date for the Exodus, for example, and you use the long 430-year stay in Egypt, you get a date for Abraham around 2091 BC. But if you take a late date for the Exodus and use the shorter 215-year stay, you get a date around 1720 BC. That is a range of nearly 400 years. We're still left with a huge window of uncertainty.
And really, this whole investigation leads us to a final, bigger question. While hunting for a precise date is a fascinating historical puzzle, does it ultimately matter? When we're talking about these ancient figures whose influences echoed through thousands of years, maybe the exact when is less important than the why. You know, the enduring power of their story and the legacy that they left for billions. What do you think?